Welcome back to another Dragon Ball Super card game discussion video. In this one, we're going to go ahead and go over my deck that I used in my local card shop tournament this week, in which I got third place in a 20-player tournament. Now, we're looking at this over on Shenron's Lair, which is a website that allows you to go ahead and create decks, and they have a full database anyway, so you can go through the entire database and just kind of see what works before, whatever you have in your head, just put it together on here, and then from there, collect the cards and, build your deck physically, right? But this is the deck that I used in my local tournament because set 3 did come out. It is officially tournament legal and all that stuff as of this week. And first and second place players were playing androids. Them with, they both were playing androids with the new Dash Pack Kaba, with Kale, Caulifla, that trio. It was kind of hard for this deck to deal with that. But also some of that was just pure being unlucky with Mass Saiyan's leader skill milling. That matchup is kind of iffy. I do need a bit more chances to play against that matchup to really see what works and what doesn't really work. So the leader for this deck was Mass Saiyan. Mass Saiyan is honestly your most aggressive unit in this deck majority of the time with this deck, because this deck really, it doesn't even want to get to turn 4 from what I can tell. It tries to really aggressively, it's why it's an aggro deck, aggressively beat down the opposition around turn 3, turn 4 at the latest, because there was so many times that I was playing and I was like, I don't even have energy, but it's not that big of a deal because the deck uses a lot of overwhelm anyway. Although I can say that I felt like at times during the tournament it could have used more overwhelm. Let me go ahead and just jump into it. Mass Saiyan is a leader that allows you to mill 3 from the top of your deck once per turn. And what he does is if you mill a black card, right? There are several black cards in the deck. There's 19 of them. If you mill a black card, he picks up the critical ability. If you mill a other color card, so either the 3 green or the red, I'll get into the 3 green in a minute, but if you mill one of those other two, he picks up an additional 5k, and if you mill both, he gets both, right? So that's very good because early game, it allows Mass Saiyan to turn into a big threat for the opposition, also because of the fact that he mills 3, which in conjunction with a 3-drop overwhelm card, like the 2 Trunks is at the top middle, that works very well in synergy. It allows for the guys and the Mass Saiyan and Saiyan Kaba really early game to be super aggressive to the opposition. So as far as my black cards go, I ran 2 Negates main deck just because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And this Negate's actually really good because it has synergy with Overwhelm because it allows you to drop cards from your hand. If you need to, you can drop 2 cards from your hand and get this Negate back, right? So that's actually very good, and I found myself doing that every now and again. If I got in a position where I was getting aggroed, I could stop a couple of attacks because I was able to get this card back in my hand, which is awesome. And then it also feeds your graveyard for Overwhelm, like I said. If we move over, standard super combo, black card super combo, definitely need 4 of these in the deck. That's really obvious if you play the card game. Aside from that, this was actually good in this deck as well because of the fact that it relies on warp as opposed to your life. So I can actually a lot of times pop the super combo way before the opposition can, right? Because by turn 2, as early as turn 2, I've already warped enough cards to be able to use this because you need to have 5 cards in your warp. And then, again, additional draw, 10k boost, and stuff like that. So here's Trunks. This is the Trunks from the Villain expansion pack. This guy was actually really good. He's always has been. He's, super good, and he's stable for a lot of decks still, even with the introduction of set 3. Because what he does is he allows you to look at the top 2 cards on your deck, and from there, you add one to your hand, and then you get to choose with the other card. It goes to the top of your deck or the bottom of your deck. This is actually really good in conjunction with Mass Saiyan because it allows you to at least guarantee yourself a specific color drop. There were times where I'd have a Mira at the top of my deck as one of the 2 cards that I pick up with this, and I'm putting Mira back at the top, so that way I guarantee critical, because if I ever have a chance to decide between 15k and critical with Mass Saiyan, 9 times out of 10, I am taking the critical. Now, again, that means that you have to have a black card at the top of your deck as a mill, and Trunks allows you to do that. Say there's 3 cards in your graveyard, Overwhelm, summon Trunks, and then from there, you use Mass Saiyan's effect to mill top 3. You immediately sent a black, and since there's more red than black in the deck anyway, chances are you would have sent a red or green to the graveyard, and then you immediately do have Mass Saiyan. And Mass Saiyan's cool, too, because he's an old style Awaken leader. Allows you to flip and draw 2 as opposed to the new style that they use. Now, Unrelenting Assault Trunks, I kind of felt like I wanted more of sometimes These two Trunkses are good in conjunction with the next Trunks as well, but I'll talk to him in just a minute. This card I feel like I wanted more of sometimes because he's really good in that he can be warped out every turn if I want to with Mass Saiyan's effect, so he's an immediate target. But when you play him, of course, you do what you're going to do with him. You're going to attack with him, whatever. But when he's sent from the battle area or deck to the warp, you know, basically whenever he's done, he's a warp card. He gets warped via Overwhelm. He immediately comes back to your hand, which means you can do that again next turn if you need to, which is just a constant threat for the opponent because it's not using energy cost, which means you can still use your energy to play some of your other cards, like your Saiyan Kabas, or whatever else you want to play, your Jiren, etc., and you could just kind of go from there. Or you can use him and then use your 4 energy that you have accumulated and Xeno Evolve into this Trunks. Now, this Trunks actually picks up Double Strike, and aside from that, he lets you play a card from your warp with an energy cost of 3 or less out to the field. Now, admittedly, I wanted to use this Trunks more than I actually did. The main target for him would be Quick Rush Trunks, which is why he's in the deck, but a secondary target is Energy Power Gotenks. Since black cards are black, I never used this card. And what I mean by that is I never used him by playing him because I can't. He needs an energy green to summon him. But he is really only here to be a target for this effect. Because if I can use this effect and pop out Energy Power Trunks, Gotenks, excuse me, I'm immediately forcing the opponent to discard a card from their hand when I strike their leader. So that gets rid of combo threats and stuff like that. This is a really, really underrated combination because this Trunks pops out as a double strike, and then I get another card with critical, while also potentially having a leader that has critical on the board already. So, yeah, it also works really well that way. Also, I mean, this Trunks can Xeno Evolve on top of the other Trunks as well. But Unrelenting Assault Trunks was the main target for that most of the time. So, yeah, I've kind of explained what I wanted to do with this Trunks. But, again, admittedly, his combo was kind of, quote-unquote, a little too cute for me. Like, I couldn't do it most of the time. And having 4 felt like it was kind of unnecessary. At the very least, he still is a 0-cost 5k boost. So that's very useful when it comes to late game, trying to aggro, make sure you get that last hit in and win the game. So, at the very least, you could drop him as a combo card. But admittedly, I charged him a lot. You know, if I ever started off with this Trunks in my hand or the Energy Power Gotenks, I mulliganed, and they were gone. So Mira is a critical threat. He also uses Overwhelm. Nothing fancy here. He just allows for himself and then potentially Quick Rush Trunks or Gotenks and Kaba and Mass Saiyan to just put heavy pressure on the opposition. You can get Mira out as early as turn 2, which again is really hard to deal with. And if you're having critical cards out there, you know, if they're going to combo over it, that's fine, but they're still losing card advantage. That's what makes critical probably one of the best abilities in this game. I already talked about Energy Power Gotenks. I didn't mind the card. Like, I actually probably chose it more than Quick Rush Trunks as a target for Killer Sword Trunks' ability. There was nothing wrong with that. Aside from that, he was either charged or just simply never used because you can't summon him outright unless, I guess, you know, you can play him if you charge one and draw into another one, which I never had happen. Saiyan Kaba, staple for red decks. You definitely play him if you were playing red. It's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Red means aggro. That means Saiyan Kaba comes out. It is that simple. But another sneaky good option for this deck would be the Fearless Pan card because she allows for all your red cards to become double strikes. So you can kind of allow Kaba to be a double strike unit without having to pay his costs, I guess. But I wouldn't really run her too much. But that's just me, though. But still, he also allows you to help. He actually, helps with Self-Awakening, which is awesome, right? Self-Awakening is awesome in this card game because it allows Mass Saiyan to become an even bigger threat. Mass Saiyan's effect, admittedly, doesn't change whenever he awakens, though. It's the exact same thing, but he at least turns into a 20k critical body that allows you to draw each time he strikes. Manipulating God Champa is really only here for one of 2 reasons, or 3 reasons, I guess. He's still a 5k boost combo, also can be used as a single energy cost summon to allow me to tutor out one of the other 2 Champas. And, you know, most of the time you're taking Furthering Destruction Champa if he's an option. But there were times, admittedly, where I didn't have a target for this because maybe it's late game or whatever. And I was really fishing for that Furthering Destruction to get game. Because when I talk about Furthering Destruction, you'll kind of see a really, really gross combo. But yeah. So aside from that, I mean, he still can be charged if you need to charge him for a red energy. Sometimes I round up charging him. Like late game, I just charged it. There's no reason to have it. Quick Rush Trunks. This is a new card as well. He actually picks up critical. As a 2-drop critical, he's very useful in that he's early game threat as well. So you can get Mass Saiyan and Kaba out turn 1 if you start the first turn of the duel, and your opponent plays their turn, whatever. And on your following turn, if you have 2 red energy, which is the worst part about this card, you need 2 red energy, but it's passable. It's just I found myself most of the time not wanting to charge any of my red cards because they're all needed for the most part. So yeah. But if you do find yourself with that scenario, you could pop out a Quick Rush Trunks and have another critical threat on the board, and God forbid you have a Mira as well out there. I mean, this deck has really freaking crazy turn 2 potential. You could pop out a critical Mira, pop out this guy, assuming you already had Kaba out there as well. Mass Saiyan Mulligans, Mills. And the opponent's just like, wait, what's happening here? So Mass Saiyan is a really good leader. Aside from Quick Rush Trunks, the next card was Furthering Destruction Champa. This card, in conjunction with either Mira, or I guess Mira, Trunks, or Mass Saiyan, is a gross combination. These critical threats, getting double strike critical is disgusting. And Mass Saiyan being a, what is this? He picks up double strike and actually gets a 10k boost. So he'd be a 25k crit double strike early game. That's very powerful. Very powerful. So don't sleep on this. This is like literally one of the best cards in the deck, because he allows for these other cards to be more powerful. Or you can even pop him on an Overwhelm card if you don't mind the opponent getting the cards in their hand. A lot of times I didn't want to do that, but if you don't mind it, you can do that. Aside from that, you got Jiren, board clearer, double strike. Attacking cards in active mode is pretty busted, to be honest. So he attacks, and then he swings back to active mode, and then attacks again, and it gets in a 10k boost on his power. He also has double strike. Admittedly, he has to attack a battle card to get back to active mode, but still one of the best red cards in the game, hands down. If you can run 4, you're going to run 4. Now, a couple of new cards here. Topo. So Topo is actually a negate. He's a counter card. You play him out from your hand and negate it. Now, this has really good synergy with Mass Saiyan, because Mass Saiyan can actually boost himself to 15k without being awakened. You know, most of the time you have to be awakened to get that type of an attack boost. Mass Saiyan, is able to do it. Or late game, say your opponent or yourself is already awakened, then it still kind of does the same thing. But if you are awakened, all you do is pay 2 red energy to use a negate Topo, and you get to play him out there. And he also has an offensive effect that I never really used. I just mainly used him as a negate, which is why I only ran 2 times Jesmond. But aside from that, he is able to go back to active mode when he KOs a battle card. So that's a thing. I mean, it wasn't really usable. And we have this Goku. I believe he's in the starter deck. He has an evolve effect, never used it. He also has barrier, which if you ever played him would be good. But really, this was a combo card. That's it. When I combo with this card, I get to draw 1 extra card. It costs 1 energy, 10k boost. Still get to draw a card, so innately he's one of the best cards to combo with in this deck, and just in my mind in the game, period. Last option was Terror Champa, Destructive Terror. He actually can be tutored out by manipulating God Champa, which is cool, but I can say admittedly I just probably will wind up dropping him because, I don't know, I just never got a chance to play him. Like, the latest the game ever got, the biggest threats I ever played, aside from the Mass Saiyan leader, were just the Killer Sword Trunks and the Jiren. Or Mira, because Mira is super easy to play in this deck, but I never got to a turn 6. It never happened. And also, that could have been my fault too, because I could tell that the game was a game where I was going to wind up needing to be super aggressive early on, like, for example, against Mecha Frieza and stuff like that. And that's part of the reason why I have so much critical in the deck too, because of the Mecha Frieza matchup, and then, of course, the negates and stuff. But I just never got in a position where I needed to use him. But if, on the off chance I ever did need Champa, he would have been a good card because of his auto effect. When you play this card, choose all your opponent's battle cards in the battle area with 15,000 or less and KO them. That can be sneaky good depending on what they have out there. Because if you look at my deck, for example, against my deck, that literally clears most of my deck. So that's a really good effect, assuming that all my monsters were able to stay out there. My cards, excuse me, not Yu-Gi-Oh! On top of that, he's a triple strike threat. Now, he doesn't have critical, but he's still a triple strike threat and can be tutored out. But most of the time, he was just charged, to be honest, into my energy. So anyways, there were a lot of cards that I considered, but I also had to kind of throw this together a little bit. The most cards that I am just kind of worried about were the Champas. The Goku was cool. Honestly, he could have been replaced, but the extra draw was nice. But aside from that, I like the deck a lot, honestly. And maybe the Trunks engine is a little too cutesy for me. I don't him in particular. The other two are fine, but this one in particular could be dropped for maybe a Haru attacker Majin. She'd be a nice option in the deck. I believe that's her name. And things of that nature. But if you guys have any recommendations on how to improve the deck, let me know down below. If you guys have any recommendations on how to improve the content here on the channel as well, let me know. If you guys did enjoy this, make sure you consider subscribing for more content on Dragon Ball Super's card game. I'm going to try to continue to find ways. I know I've been doing unboxings and stuff. I'm going to continue to try to find ways to bring you guys content on this. So have an awesome day. I'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy.